Hello and welcome to Illumination Podcast with Nick and Kisma. Today's topic is kind of strange. We're calling it ghosts and weird energy. So before I bring Nick on, I just want to share that he and I were just kind of contemplating, like, what are we going to talk about? We felt like doing something different today. We have some cool guests coming up. You know, we had this great interview with JP Sears a couple weeks ago. So hopefully you're checking that out. And we have some other guests, but we wanted to just tell a few stories. And we thought, you know, we're really big into this internal energetics, but oftentimes it's the external energetics that can be a little weird or creepy. Welcome to the Illumination Podcast with Nick and Kisma, bringing you ancient wisdom for modern day success so that you can sparkle just a little bit brighter each and every day. If what you hear speaks to your soul, go ahead and give us a rating and a review in iTunes. You can also find us on SoundCloud and Stitcher. And hey, if there's somebody in your life that you think would enjoy this podcast, go ahead and share it with them. Well, hey, Nick.
Hey there, Kisma.
How are you?
I'm good.
Are you ready to talk about ghosts and goblins and stuff?
I got a story or so to tell.
You have a story. I have a story. Mine's from a long time ago. Yours is not from that long time ago. And we just have this thing about knowing when the energy is off in a space.
It's like that internal sensor.
It's an internal sensor. Yeah, we'll get to that. We want to tell our stories first, but there really is, like, the more sensitive you become, the more clear you become. You can walk in a room and be like, wait, what? What's going on? And then if something shifts in one's house, you just know. So we'll dive into that because let's face it, guys, it's all energy, right? I don't mean to sound cliche, but everything's energy. So it's not just you that is this energy. It's your house, it's your apartment, it's your workspace, and energy affects energy.
Your clothes.
Your clothes.
Yeah. It's important. I mean, the energy hygiene of the spaces that we occupy and the things that we wear and all of that and eat.
Say words have energy.
Yeah, like all of those things matter. But yeah, some stories.
So I don't know what, my intuition does this weird thing sometimes. And I was like, Nick needs to tell his ghost story. And I'll just preface it by saying this was not like he was out on a ghost hunt. We don't do that. I've had people that call and say, hey, I need you to clear my house. No problem. I can do that remotely. I can do it like this is part of what we do, right? But we're not the Ghostbusters chasers kind of people.
Yeah. I'm not looking for this.
We are not looking, just like we're just not looking. We take care of ourselves. We help our clients, our students. And the interesting thing is, Nick, like this thing that happened is you were on a business trip.
I was. Yeah. Did we? I don't think we've talked about this on the podcast.
We have not.
I don't think we ever have.
Because it was back in the day, we were members of this amazing mastermind called Empire Mastermind with Adam Spiel and Tony Tiefenbach, two great mentors of ours that really helped us build our business. And they would pick really cool places to go. Like we went to Park City, and that's where we did the hot air balloon thing. We were in Vegas. You did the Ferrari thing.
We actually started the podcast as a result of a relationship.
We did.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good, I really miss those guys, actually.
They're so awesome.
Yeah, then we would always go to cool places. Yeah, the Ferraris were really fun.
Yeah.
But in this particular one that this happened was in New Orleans.
New Orleans. It's one place I've never been.
It's an interesting town. I can say that. I mean, it's a lot of old energy.
Very
for sure.
Old, right?
We just very interesting things there. And I didn't really give it much thought. Kisma didn't go on this trip.
Yeah.
I can't remember why.
I had something going on here, so you elected to go, and I think I was helping someone run an event. But I remember, I'll just kick it off. I remember we're not very, when we travel, we're pretty independent, right? Like we don't have to call each other and we get in and do all that kind of attachment stuff. But I remember you got to the hotel, which was a great hotel. It's the Ritz.
Yeah.
The Ritz in New Orleans, right? And you called me and you're like, I'm just walking into my room and he's like, this is weird. And I remember it's very interesting, right? When someone goes through an experience that's kind of interesting or profound, like you can relive it. And I remember this conversation, I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, there's a chair like in the, this is really weird. You just kept saying the word weird. Now, Nick is a guy and he's not very descriptive. All right. So don't take that wrong. You know what I mean? Like, I'd be like, oh, well, there's this armchair in its place. You're just be like, this chair's in the wrong place. And I'm like, well, maybe the housekeeper moved it.
Yeah, I don't know.
So can you start with walking into the room and just having this, because you gave me this sensation of like something really is off.
It started before that. You know, you check into the hotel. It's a nice hotel.
Yeah, nothing against the Ritz, guys. And they came clean. We'll tell you what they said about the ghosts in their hotel.
Yeah, it's a really, really nice hotel. And lobby's all fine. I go up to my floor. I can't remember which floor I was on. I want to say the 4th floor.
4 came to me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you kind of like, as you're walking to the hotel, you're going down this hallway, and then it's got this kind of like weird turn in it. Like it's like a, and
like someone's going to jump out and grab you turn?
Not quite like that, but then it's difficult to describe, but back in the corner, like it's like back corners. In a corner room, but not like a corner room. It was more like there was like a cluster of rooms on the corner. And so then there's a couple different doorways, and it's just like this. I'm like, wow, it's weird. Like this must be an old building. Yeah. And so that in itself was like, but I've definitely stayed in some bizarre designed hotels.
You've traveled a lot.
And I know that's an old building, so I wasn't that surprised. But then that was it. When I walked in the room, typical hotel room. There's the bathroom, was on the left, and then you walk straight ahead, and then there's a bed. I got a king size bed in that one, and then across from that is where the TV would be. There's a little desk. It's a small room. Like there was not a lot of extra space. And where the chair should be, it gives
me the creeps that it was that small and that thing was in there with you. But anyways, go ahead.
It was just this chair was just kind of sitting in the middle of the room. Like,
okay, let me ask you, was the chair facing the door when you walked in, like someone was sitting there watching you?
Ooh.
It gets better, guys. I know I'm just creeping us out. But and let me just sidebar how interesting it is. We've been in so many hotel rooms that we could never, ever describe. But this one really stayed with you, right?
Well, yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I was there for days, you know. The story unfolds.
Without sleep, yeah.
Was the chair facing me? I don't believe it was actually, but it was facing
the TV.
I think it was facing the TV.
I was looking at that portal way in the TV screen,
and it was just about the weirdest place that you could put a chair in the room. Like no normal person
housekeeper would have put it there.
I can't imagine that they would leave that there for any reason. I can't even imagine that they would move it there for any reason.
Yeah.
So it absolutely made no sense.
This chair. I'm like, this is weird. It's like, what's it doing here? And you were a little bit like, because I think there was some sense going on. Like it wasn't just the chair. But you're like, this is weird.
Well, like I said, I mean, it felt strange just walking back into this weird corner, and it was real quiet. You know, it was just something didn't feel right. And then I walk in, and then there's this chair just sitting there. I'm like, what is this chair doing here? It made no sense to me. Like my brain just couldn't compute. Like what is this thing? And so I moved it and everything. We got off the phone, and it was So. Let's see.
So did you go out to dinner or something before you went to bed? Train of truth.
We must have gone out to dinner. Like I said, I was there for a couple nights. I want to say 3 nights.
I think you were there for 3 nights.
Yeah. And so the first night, I was reading Extreme Ownership.
I was saying it was Jocko's book.
It was totally Jocko's book.
Shout out to Jocko Willink and Extreme Ownership.
Yeah, the Jocko podcast.
Yeah, we love his book.
And I was reading his book at the time and really, really into it. Like, what a great book on leadership. Really, really cool. And I remember that night, that was that first night, and I was finished reading my book, turned out the lights a little reluctantly. You know, I'm a grown man, you know, I don't, I felt a little weird about turning out the, I felt a little weird about feeling weird about turning out the lights. I was like, come on, dude, you're a grown man. Man, I'm reading the Navy SEAL book. It's like, man up,
You can't turn out
like,
the lights.
Whatever. And I'm thinking like, I really don't want to turn these lights out. But
what would Jocko say?
Yeah, what would Jocko think? Oh, man. And so anyway, I do turn out the lights. And
what time was this, do you think?
I honestly don't remember. It wasn't too late.
Well, but you went from Pacific to Central Time. So you're probably like ready to go to sleep earlier.
Yeah, but it might have been later there because I was staying. I would have stayed up later there.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Got it backwards.
And so I go to sleep, and I'm laying down, and everything's fine. And then you kind of slip into that twilight. It's like you're just kind of falling off to sleep, and I hear sheets rustle.
Okay. So are you because we're like, okay, I hear sheets. Could it have been a mouse? Could there have been like...
Definitely wasn't a mouse or a critter. I know that sound.
Because you grew up like in Sterling Heights, Michigan.
Well, I mean, Sterling Heights wasn't like in the sticks, but we used to go up north all the time. Yeah, so I know what the rodents sound like. Totally wasn't that. 100% wasn't that. Could it have been something else? Maybe, I mean, there's always that. But, you're twilighting, so it's a little like...
a little odd.
Can you really put your finger on it? And it's so strange that these sort of occurrences seem to happen in those kind of states. But this time, there's the proximity of it, of the sound of, you hear the sheets rustle, and I heard the sheets rustle, and I was like, whoa, it was enough.
It was enough for you to
for me to sit up.
Oh, that's a lot.
And be like, that's weird.
Yeah, because usually, guys, like when you hear something or you're dreaming, you're just kind of like, yeah, whatever, I'm going back to sleep. And Nick, let me just share, Nick loves his sleep. So I will just say, for something to get him to wake up, it had to be present.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
He sleeps through so much stuff, like I can't even say.
That's what I mean, like the proximity of it. I was like, whoa, that's weird. I don't want to overuse that word, but it was just like weird to me. It was a very weird experience to me. So great. I got up then, and I went and just walked around. I might have used the restroom or whatever. I finally come back to bed, and I somehow sleep. I don't think I slept very well the rest of the night, and go to the meeting the next day. It was pretty much all guys. It was
the all guy meeting.
Yeah.
Where the girls went. And I remember you sent me a text like, I heard sheets rustling in my room.
And I shared it with the guys, and they were just teasing me. They just had a ball with that one.
Yeah, especially Toby, right?
Yeah.
He's like, yeah. And I'm like, you better ask Toby, what do you do like with this?
I did, and he just teased me. Everybody was teasing me. We were having a good time with it, and then I went out. So we have our day and stuff, and in the back of my head, I'm thinking I've got some anxiety growing around it because it's like I'm gonna have to go back. And I went out and hung out with Tony that night, and Tony and I were hanging out on Bourbon Street, and we really just hanging out. We weren't whooping it up or anything wild or anything like that. But in the back of my head, I'm like, oh man, like should I stay out for one more? Like. I don't want to go back just yet. And so anyway, I do go back, and I'm very uncomfortable. I take my salt bath. I do, all my normal stuff. I got the ohms chanting. And
we do that at hotel rooms. We bring our ohms. We bring some specific incense.
Yeah, all this stuff. And then...
Now, let me just ask a question before you go on. Had you, by this point, investigated New Orleans or the hotel or anything on that day? Because all you have to do, and we might put a link to this on our show notes, is like look up that hotel and see the history of ghosts.
I don't think I did.
I think I did, but I kept my mouth shut because when you said that, I think I looked it up and I was like, oh, this is interesting.
I don't think I did that until the next night. And
after night 2, which was the doozy.
This was the one that was like, whoa. And so I go to bed, and I actually fall asleep. Ownership. Yeah, I actually fall asleep. And then I wake up in the middle of the night to use the restroom. And I turn on the light. And it was a light that, the switch would stay on. And so I go to use the restroom, and then I come out, and the light is off. And I'm just like, oh, God, what? And
creepy.
and I walk on over there and turn on the light, and I'm like, hey, I don't really need to see anything here. I'm just like, I don't really want any part of this. I'm saying this out loud, like, I don't want any part of this. Like, whatever you want, just whatever, but leave me out of it. And I turned out the light again, and then
Which was very brave of you.
Yeah, well, I was reading Extreme Ownership.
Yeah, you're trying to be the Navy SEAL.
I'm not going to let it get the best of me,
Get after it.
And get after it. And so then I go to lay back down to sleep, right? And this was just after this happened, and I'm lay back down, and then
is your heart racing?
That's not true. I actually stayed up and read for a while.
You did.
Longer.
You stayed
I did.
Up and read.
Yeah. Now that I was like, oh man, it's hard for me to piece some of it together actually, because it was such an interesting experience. So I did stay up and read a little bit longer. I was just like, yep, not sleeping right now. But then I would start to get tired again. So this time, then I laid down to go to sleep, and this was the one.
Did you turn the light back out?
I did turn the light back out. Yeah. And so then this one was the time where I was laying there, and then I just felt that presence sit down on the bed with me.
Wait, what presence?
It was like I could feel it. It was like a person sat on the bed with me. You could feel it right up against my leg. And it kind of like, it didn't like plop down in the bed. It just kind of eased on in. So it was like, shh, and then it got real heavy right next to my leg.
And you could feel it against your leg?
I could feel it against my leg.
Oh, golly.
And yeah, that was the one. I just shot up. I was like, okay. I don't want any part of this. And I was like, ugh, like, I don't want any part of this, And I didn't sleep the rest of the night.
Of course not. Did you keep the light on?
Actually, no.
I would have been. I would have had every single light on.
I didn't actually. I did turn it. I turned it back out. I tried to go back to sleep. It was quiet for the rest of the night. It
was because you just said go. Like, I don't want this.
I don't want any part of this. Okay. Yeah, I was like, please go. And then I did the property clearings and some other things like that. And I did anything that I knew how to do, I was doing. I'm chanting. I'm doing the whole 9 yards. And I got a few tips from another person as well. And I told the guys what happened. Well, what was really interesting too, they're teasing me, and everybody asked, they're like, dude, why didn't you change rooms? And you asked me that. You're like, why don't you change rooms? And it's kind of like, it's the same reason that, if you got a bad boss and you're like, oh, screw this boss, I'm going to leave jobs. Well, you never know, like, your next boss might be as bad or worse. Oh, God. And my thought was, okay, well, I'm not in any danger. So who knows what's in the other room? And come to find out, another guy in the mastermind, Raul.
Oh, golly.
He's in this room.
In the same hotel.
In the same hotel. And next to him, there's screaming in tongues, like just like some kind of wild chanting and screaming and all this. Like, this sounded like somebody was getting murdered in there, he said. And I was like, well, was it a human or otherwise? And he's like, I think it was a person, but I don't really know. I never saw that person. And that's that. And I was thinking, yep, right choice, man. Stay in the corner.
Stay with the ghost.
Okay, so they're sitting on your bed, like whatever. At least nobody's screaming bloody murder next to my hotel room.
Oh my gosh.
So that was going on at his over in his neck of the woods. I don't know where that was, but he was in the same hotel. And that was that day that I definitely checked out the hotel itself.
If I remember correctly, you even asked some of the staff and some people around town. It's like, hey, what's with the ghosts?
I did. Yeah. I was super curious. And the staff they have a party line on that. So they didn't have too much information to give. But apparently there is a dude that hangs out specifically in the library there, but has been seen elsewhere. And I want to say
I thought there was a little girl in the spa or something.
Young girl in the spa. Yeah, you got it. And then I was out and about. I got myself a cup of coffee, obviously, because I was tired because I hadn't freaking slept. And and I did ask a few people, and they're like, just it's pretty normal. Like, just don't assume that they're bad or out to get you or anything like that. And I thought, all right, that's cool. And I took that with me, and and did all my other stuff, a whole nother round of all the clear and everything that I knew how to do. And the third night was quiet. Wow. Thank God.
True.
The third night was quiet. So
weird, right?
Yeah, that was my that was my ghost story. And, just weird being sensitive to it. And like,
well, I think it's funny too, because it's like, all right, someone sat on your bed. All right, someone turned the light. Like when you're alone and you're in a different place, that is freaky. Like when you're in your house, you might just think, oh, did I turn that light on? Like it's so familiar, right? You might just think, maybe I turned it off, or, oh, maybe the bulb's burning out. But when you're in a different place and something like that happens, it's very disconcerting.
It is, yeah. I mean, just the hotel itself felt unsettling. And there was an epilogue. I don't know if you remember the epilogue.
There's an epilogue.
I went up I went up, I can't remember, to drop off something with my energy teacher, and was hanging out with her and relaying the story. And
it was about a week later, right after you got back?
Maybe. Yeah.
2 weeks at the most.
No, I don't think it was that long. I was going to say more like a couple days,
okay.
But, and she's highly, highly gifted and clairvoyant in these sorts of affairs. And I'm sitting there telling her the story, and she's like, that's still with you. I don't know if she was doing it to mess with me. I don't think she was.
She wouldn't do that.
But I don't think she would
it's
either.
Not the best karma.
And I just froze. I was like, what are we gonna do about that? And fortunately for me, she's very skilled, and she's just like, she kind of smiles at me. She's like, continue your story. And so I keep telling her the story, and she does whatever she does. And all was quiet from then on. But, it was weird. I do not need experiences like that. I'm just not into it.
Yeah. Like I said, we're not ghost chasers. We don't play in that realm, but every now and then, and I think it's important to just say this isn't about like a horror movie, but this is for those of you that might think we've gone into crazy town. I bet, and I'm going to encourage those of you that have had your own ghost stories, send them to us. info@Source Movement. We'll do a little post or talk about them on our next show. But
that'd be really fun.
Yeah, I'd love to hear your ghost stories. I know for me, I had a similar, it's really interesting. There's something about people sitting on the bed when I was a teenager. So I would say I was probably 14, because I remember I just gotten back from a band camp, and I went to bed. I remember the bedroom I was in my parents' big house, and I woke up in the middle of the night with a stomach ache. So happens, right? When you're young, you get a stomach ache, eat too much ice cream or whatever. I remember waking up, and it was really hurting. I was moaning, which is very unusual. But I was like, and I was kind of calling my mom, who actually slept on the other side of the house. And
it's a big house.
It was a big house, like a long ranch. Here comes the train of truth behind me. But I remember that I opened my eyes and I saw my mom, who I thought was my mom, sitting on the bed, but she was more like towards the foot of the bed. So I didn't feel her like you were talking about, but I saw this woman and I was like, oh, okay, you're here. It's okay. And that was it. I just can't remember. And I can still flash back to it. Isn't it weird how you go back to something? And so the next morning, I remember my mom said, hey, do you want to go shopping? It was a Saturday. I'm like, but I'm not feeling good. Remember, my stomach hurts. She's like, what do you mean? I was like, well, you came to my room last night. Remember I told you? She goes, no, I didn't. And I was like, who was that? Weird. But maybe it was an angel. Maybe it was a guy. Like, again, we don't have to assume they're different. But here's what we can do. So when you go into a space and you feel like something is heavy or off, and this is where we get to everything has basically a frequency to it, and everything has this vibe. Well, it's more like, I just use the word frequency. If it feels heavy, if it feels off, you want to cleanse it, because it's just like you, right? You don't want to be in your house where it's feeling heavy, and you will know, like the more sensitive we get, we're like, all right, something's got to go on. Like we got to do a clearing on the house. We've got neighbors, we're in a condo association. There's a whole bunch of stuff that goes on. So Nick, what are a couple things that you recommend just just the basics that could be considered maintenance.
Salt bowls are great. So
With water, right?
yeah, a little salt and water in a bowl that you would never, ever, ever eat out of. And just, just leave that by your workspace or something. It does a really good job of just collecting weird stuff. Incense, and not like some super, you don't got to smoke the place out.
But let's talk about sage, because some people sage their place and it doesn't really do the trick.
Sage is all right, but it just is more like for lower stuff. It's not going to do the whole job. So it can help, but there's better ways. There's a really good brand of incense that works.
We'll put a link on our show notes for that incense. There is the different fragrances have a different frequency, right?
Yeah, exactly. And those do a really good job of just eating things up. I've heard people like, oh, well, I'll just diffuse some oil. Well, that's nice, but the oil doesn't, when you diffuse oil, it's just not as thorough. It's really just not. And that one, salt bowls, those are a couple good ones. Chanting. There is we have a chant, an Om chant that plays. It's super, super clean. And it's kind of like one of those little automatic vacuum machines. Yeah, it just kind of like rolls around and vacuums stuff. It's like that, but for energy.
Right. That's a good way to put it. We have that going 24/7.
24/7. Yeah, just some old iPod and some old Bose thing that we had laying around, just hooked it up and kind of tucked it in the corner and let it run 24/7. And it's really, really works.
Yeah.
So I think about it in terms of like energy hygiene.
Yeah.
You're walking around out in the world and you don't ever have to even turn on the news or anything negative or violent or whatever to step out into your world and into your life and to be surrounded with those things.
Right.
In your energies intersecting with other people's energies,
right.
So things, if you're not really, really diligent about, how you keep your own cleanliness, the likelihood is that you will bring some of that home with you.
Right.
Take off your shoes. Like, don't wear your shoes in the house.
Yeah. We never have shoes in our house.
Yeah. Just like, that's another thing, that's all just low stuff. And just from the just pure like dirt, that
right.
piece of it, but really energetically, it's a lot of real lower stuff that you're walking around and like take your shoes off. Like, do not wear your shoes in the house. So those sorts of things help you to keep the space more clean. And then I'm always looking for hacks. So that's why the salt bowls, that's why the incense.
What do you think about crystals?
Crystals, you got to get a good crystal.
You have to know what to get.
Yeah. Crystals can be super dirty.
Yeah. You have to clean your crystals. So we use, black obsidian. Can put a link to that in the show notes.
Jasper.
Black obsidian, red jasper. And selenite is one of those crystals that you never actually have to cleanse. Your other crystals, you got to put in the sun in salt water, like probably once a month or once every 2 months.
They'll get dirty. And sometimes they do just get spent, or they're just not that great of a crystal, which most people just don't have the ability to really
we always
determine. So this is something I talk about on the Energy Mastery webinar, actually, where people are using crystals for self-care. And like, there's nothing wrong with them. I have them and, I really enjoy them. But if you don't manage your own energy, if you don't know how to self-care and self-cleanse in a really efficient way, the crystals ain't going to do it.
This is true. They'll just suck everything up and get dirty themselves.
Yeah. So, and God knows what. So it's just, it's a great thing to put on autopilot because it does do some work that then you don't have to.
Right.
But at the end of the day, you really have to deal with your human first. Like, that's the most important thing. Yeah. I don't know. I used to have, I don't think I've ever talked to anybody about this actually, but in our basement, back in my home in Sterling Heights.
Oh, basement. That's always a scary word for me.
And you were scared of your basement?
We had a crawl space and my dad said the boogeyman lived there, so that didn't help. Or someone put dead bodies in there.
Oh my God.
I hope the people that live in our house now are not listening.
Yeah, that would, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure it's not
happened.
the case. It's just the thing you tell your kids when you're like,
Yeah, don't ever go in there.
Yeah, right. So that we can go crawling in there and get stuck. They're dead bodies.
I mean, I spent a lot of time down there actually because
You're a trumpet player.
I was a trumpet player, and also we had a little TV down there. And I was the video game era, so the Atari 2600, and I'd hang out there and watch my cartoons and stuff like that. We had a nice little room set up down there, and then later, one of my favorite toys was my G.I. Joes. Like I love my G.I. Joes. My mom actually gave me a table down there where I could set up a battlefield and all this stuff. It was really cool. And so I would actually spend a lot of time down there. But I always remember this. You're right. It's funny how it really sticks out in your mind. Right. Whenever I'd come up the stairs, I'd feel this kind of like feeling of dread, and I would book up those stairs, man.
Stairs, right?
Just fast, like as fast as I could up the stairs. Humanly, I was just like, oh, I gotta go now, and I would just run. But when I was down, like I spent a lot of time down there, I never really felt uncomfortable with it. But when I was leaving, I was like, I'm out, I'm gone, and I would just run so fast up those stairs.
And then we have that friend/client who got pulled down. Remember? She's going up her stairs, and she grew up in Ohio too, not far from me.
I don't remember this story.
And her leg, like she had, those open steps, and someone or something grabbed a leg and tried to pull her down through the stairs.
Oh dear God! I don't remember. I must have blocked that out.
I think you blocked it out. It's like,
oh my God,
really young.
Whew.
Things happen, people, but you are safe. You are safe. So if you think Illumination Podcast has gone to crazy town, trust me, we haven't. We just thought, like, what kind of weird stories can we share with you? And I'm going to...
Let's be fair. This is a little bit of a crazy town podcast. We're definitely going to... But, you know what? But before... I don't want to cut you off, but there's that one thing, too, but there's weird people, too. Remember that one time we were at a friend's house...
Oh, yeah.
And we were hanging out, and people do these really weird things. There's two things actually I want to cover with this.
Yeah, because they see our bright and shininess, and they just want to go for it. And people keep those people away.
And so the first one is where people walk into a space, and they're just like, oh, the energy's so weird in here. I just can't handle it. And it's like pretentiousness about it or something like that. It's like, deal with your stuff. If you can deal with your human and your own energy, you should be fine. And if you're not, then you need better tools, and you should definitely come to Energy Mastery. Now that aside, the other piece of this is the weird people that you encounter with some of these things. And so we were at a friend's house hanging out, and there was this really kind of weird lady hanging out there. This is the episode of weird. I don't know how, I'm going to go back and count how many times we said weird, or I said weird, but it's just weird. Anyway, we're sitting there, and she just starts doing a reading on me. Like she just starts reading these things. And I was like, this is so inappropriate, but it was nothing. It was rather innocuous for the most part, but I was just like, yeah, okay, that's great. Thank you. Next. And, but I remember she started doing that with you. And then we left there, and we were driving. Because we were driving to a meeting, right? And then all of a sudden, I'm on the phone, right? I had a phone call.
I was driving.
I was talking. You were driving, and then all of a sudden, you had a very weird experience.
I just started getting vertigo. Like, what is happening? Spinning, to the point where I had to pull over to the side of the road and just. And I remember Nick's like on a sales call or something. He's looking at me, and I'm just like, just going to breathe. I'm just going to drink water. And it was a very strange occurrence. And then I got myself together. We went back on the road, and our destination was just like, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes. But as soon as I got out of the car, my knees buckled.
Right.
And I was like, what? And then again, we met up with one of our teachers, and she said, oh, yeah, that's what happens when somebody gets into your field like that. She's like a vampire.
Total vampire. Yeah. And just like, wow, it really took you by surprise. That was pretty early on in our journey with this.
It was about 3.5 years ago, I think. And I just didn't have the reason. I just thought, well, she's trying to be nice. And I kept saying, yeah, it's cool. I don't need to know. Like, don't tell me that stuff. But I didn't, because she was with a friend of ours, I just didn't think, you assume by association people are cool. And now I would know exactly what to do, but it was a really fascinating experiment.
Yeah, yeah. It's so highly inappropriate. And it kind of brings up, I think part of this was with when you talk about weird energies in the world, like there's some pretty weird people out there,
totally
some crazy town people. And that is one of the things that I see pretty rampant in the kind of quote unquote spiritual community is where people just start advice giving or just like they're gifted. And it's not to say that they're not gifted and that they don't have talents, but they just just start doing that while you're just trying to have a normal conversation with them.
Inappropriate. Don't do that.
So
if someone does it,
inappropriate.
just say, thank you, I don't need to know.
I don't need to know. You just tell them it's inappropriate. Like what you're doing is inappropriate. Don't do that.
Yeah.
I didn't ask for that.
Right.
And hopefully they'll get angry and go huff off, you know? I mean, thank you. Next.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, it's that sort of stuff. So those things are out there, but it's real, you know? Like the energy is actually really, really powerful. People are affected by it in ways that we have no idea about.
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
And it's not that you have to have a high sensitivity to even be aware. Like, you know, when you walk into a weird space.
People do, one of our clients a couple clients that are realtors, and we talk about this all the time. I'm like, do you ever show a house and everything's going fine, and then all of a sudden they walk into a room, they're like, nope, this isn't the house. And they have no idea why. And they're like, it happens all the time. So Jennifer's a feng shui expert, and Karen does clearings on her property. It's like, just clear it out, because there's all of these old memories and energies and things, and people don't understand what they're feeling, but they feel something.
Right. And you'll feel something, like when you're in a conversation with somebody, you're picking something up, whether you're conscious of it or not is beside the fact. Like you're still picking something up. There's an exchange happening there. So
there's
it's pretty
a cord,
interesting.
There's a hook. That's why we teach the cord cutting and, being grounded in your body, in your own presence. So one final thing that we had, which is really about, actually, we look at this more of following the divine laws. And this one is the divine law of use. So this is where I want to challenge everybody listening to try this out, to be super receptive to anything in your house that no longer belongs to you. And what we mean by this is, number one, we'll look at it in terms of clutter. Clutter is really heavy. So if there's a lot of clutter in your home, in your office, do a deep cleanse. That's actually one of the most significant ways you can keep your home energetically nice and clean, is declutter. Because when you have old energy stuff hanging around, it kind of starts to attract more of that old energy.
Yeah. I mean, ask anybody, any feng shui person, they'll tell you it's horrible for the flow. Horrible for the flow in the house.
Right.
Yeah. So if anybody needs a good person, we should just ping us and we'll send you to the best. Yeah.
Totally. So you declutter. Now, the other thing is, you'll just start to notice something and be like, I feel like that's not mine anymore. Listen to your intuition, because it's correct. Sometimes we might own something and then it's to go to somebody else. So what happened between Nick and I, this was just really within this last year.
Yeah, this isn't too long ago.
I kept waking up like feeling, I just said to him, there's something in the house that doesn't belong here. Like, I'm just getting this heavy kind of ping. I was like, there's something that doesn't belong. There's something that doesn't belong. And I was like, we're going to figure it out and it has to go. And he's like, all right, whatever. So, and so I started to get the picture. And I said to him, I was like, okay, close your eyes and ask your higher self, what is in this house that needs to go? And I'll do the same thing. And it took us 15 seconds tops. We opened our eyes and we both said the kitchen table.
Kitchen table.
This is random. Our kitchen table was not old and decrepit.
It was only a couple years old.
Yeah, it was a good, expensive, like it was big. We had it in the other apartment in Point Loma. It had this big metal top and a wood base. But for whatever reason, whether the metal, just through our intuition, the metal was too much for the condo here or whatever, it was like, it's got to go.
It had those sharp corners.
It had the sharp corners. So, of course, Nick, he puts it up for sale. I'm like, we're not supposed to sell it. We're supposed to give it away. So
yeah, it didn't sell. Dude, that thing was freaking heavy, by the way.
It was heavy.
Yeah.
And I just knew, it's like, we're supposed to give it away. So we called disabled veterans. They were awesome. They picked it. We lugged it downstairs. They picked it up and got it out. And here's the funny thing. That day, Nick had, I don't know how much come in sales. Like, he was launching some coaching program. It was just like ding, ding,
Several
ding.
thousand.
I mean,
yeah,
it was over 10,000 just coming in for these coaching programs we had. And then there were 2 chairs that we had that were, again, from this old place. And I was like, I think I'm just going to keep one. But I heard, right? So my intuition's like, they both go. With the table, they go. I put one down there and I'm hanging on to one, which is so stupid to not listen. Like, when your intuition speaks, just listen. And it's like I'm hearing it's got to go. I'm like, okay, fine. I take it downstairs, put it up. Another sale comes in. It was like so hilarious. But you have to understand, like, you're making space for really new opportunities, new visions, new creations to come in. And if something is stifling that energetically, there's not the space.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to give in order to receive.
You have to, let's bring it up to a higher note rather than the ghosts. Give to receive.
Yeah. And that's really the point of this, though. I think the underlying point is just like keeping your space really clean. Like you got to keep, this good energy hygiene for your space is going to really help support you.
Right.
And then good energy hygiene for you in order to, not pollute your space.
Right.
So just talking about that, sale key just came in, popped up on my phone. That's always good. Cool. And that making sure that energy hygiene is always in place so that you're handling that and just doing the bulk of it so that you're not having to sit in that in your house.
Exactly.
And that's so important. If you need help with feng shui, we know some awesome people who could really help you with that.
If you need a property clearing, ping us. I can do them remotely, but we're not here to certainly pitch that. We just want to say, hey, stay clean. We'll put in the show notes, just remember, have a bowl of salt water, change it out every few days. You change it by dumping it down the toilet. We'll put a little link to some of our favorite incense.
Yeah.
That is really cool.
Those things are always helpful. There's little hacks that just make your job easier and your life better.
And stay purposeful.
Stay purposeful. Yeah, that's good.
All right.
There's our ghost stories.
There's our ghost story, crazy town story. Hey, send us your ghost stories, people. I know they're out there. info@sourcemovement.com. And look forward to some really cool episodes coming up with some authors and speakers and other spiritual teachers that we really admire. And just thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, everybody. Peace.
Namaste.